A deal made in the shadows. The wind blew hard through the metal streets of Neuraxis 9, a dark and dangerous planet far from the rich worlds. The sky was always red here. The air smelled of smoke and oil. It was a place where poor people disappeared, and no one cared. And today Lyra was one of them. She walked slowly, holding her baby close to her chest. Her arms were weak. Her body shook with every step. Her feet were bare and cold. The small baby, wrapped in old cloth, didn't cry anymore. He was too hungry, too tired. He just lay in her arms, breathing softly. Lyra's eyes were tired but not empty. There was still one thing she had left: love for her child. That love brought her here, to the human trade market, a place where people were sold like tools or pets. She hated it, but she had no choice. She had already tried everything: begging, stealing, searching for food in the trash. But nothing worked. Her baby, Riven, needed food now. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. "I'm sorry," she whispered to him. "I have nothing left to give, but myself." She reached the market. It was full of noise and firelight. Creatures from many planets shouted and pushed each other. Metal cages lined the roads. Slaves sat inside, some crying, some too tired to move. Lyra stepped into the light. Some traders turned to look. They saw a weak alien woman, skin dull from hunger, hair dirty, eyes hollow. "She's too thin," one alien said, laughing. "Not worth much," said another. Lyra didn't speak. She stood straight. She opened her cloak slowly, showing her thin arms and chest, and her baby hidden under the cloth. "I will serve. I can work. Just feed my child," she said quietly. The crowd didn't care. They laughed more. One of the traders, a large alien with 4 eyes named Bruthak, came closer. He looked her over and smirked. "She wants to sell herself? For that tiny thing?" He pointed at the baby. Bruthak waved his hand. "1 credit. That's all she's worth. Maybe half if the baby dies tomorrow." Lyra closed her eyes. She had lost even her dignity. But then, a voice spoke from behind the crowd. "I'll take her." The crowd went quiet. A tall human walked forward. He wore a dark coat and boots, his face half covered with a scarf. His eyes were cold, but not cruel. It was Commander Jace Rowan, a human from Earth, a man with a past full of battles, pain, and loss. Now he worked as a trader, but no one really knew what he wanted. He looked at Lyra, not at her body, not at the baby, but into her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. Lyra was surprised. No one had asked her name in weeks. "Lyra," she said. "And the baby?" "Riven." Jace nodded once. Then he turned to Bruthak. "How much?" Bruthak laughed. 1 credit, and maybe a pack of water." Jace reached into his pocket and threw a silver coin. "Done," he said. Bruthak caught it and smiled. "Take the trash." Lyra waited for Jace to chain her, to pull her behind him like the others, but he didn't. "Come," he said simply, and turned to walk away. Lyra followed. Her legs were weak, her heart full of fear. What kind of man was this? Why didn't he treat her like a slave? They reached a small camp just outside the city. There was a tent, a fire, and a box with supplies. Jace opened it and pulled out a food pack. He handed it to her. "Feed the baby first," he said. Lyra stared at the pack. She had begged for days, and no one had given her anything. And now, this man, who bought her, wanted her to feed her child first? She opened the pack quickly and gave it to Riven. The baby sucked on it slowly, then faster. His eyes opened a little. He made a small sound, a sound of life. Lyra's hands shook as she took the rest of the food for herself. It was the first time she had eaten in days. Jace sat near the fire. He didn't talk, didn't look at her like she was his property. After some time, Lyra asked in a quiet voice, "Why did you buy me?" Jace looked at the fire. Because no one else would, and I couldn't watch a baby die. Lyra felt her chest tighten. She didn't know what this human wanted, but he had given her food, warmth, and a little respect. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But tonight, for the first time in many days, her baby was fed, and she was alive. Maybe, just maybe, this was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning. The more human who didn't touch her, Lyra sat close to the fire, still not sure if this was a dream. Her baby, Riven, slept quietly in her arms for the first time in many nights. His tiny chest rose and fell slowly. His skin was warmer now, no longer ice cold. She had fed him, and now he looked peaceful. That alone made her feel like she could breathe again. She looked around the camp. It was small but clean. There were no chains, no cages, no guards. Only one human, Jace. He sat by the fire, legs stretched out, looking up at the stars. He said nothing, and he didn't watch her like the others used to. In fact, he seemed to be lost in thought. Lyra didn't trust silence. Silence usually came before something bad. So she stayed alert, ready to run if she had to. But where would she go? There was nowhere else. No one waiting. No food, no hope. Only this quiet human who gave her food without asking anything in return. "Are you going to keep me?" she asked, her voice low. Jace didn't turn his head. "I didn't buy you to keep you." "Then why?" He paused. "I couldn't let a baby die." Lyra waited, expecting more, but he said nothing else. She stared at the back of his head, confused. In her world, no one helped for free. No one cared if a child died, especially not someone else's child. This man was either lying or mad, or both. Jace stood up and walked toward a metal box. He opened it and took out a blanket, then handed it to her. "It gets colder at night," he said. She took the blanket slowly. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, then returned to his seat by the fire. Still, he didn't ask her to serve him, didn't order her to do anything. Lyra wrapped the blanket around herself and the baby, her body shaking slightly, not from cold, but from confusion. This was not how things were supposed to go. She had expected to be forced to cook, clean, or worse. She had prepared herself for pain, but this human gave her warmth, food, a place to sleep, and space. Her eyes closed for a moment, but she forced them open again. She couldn't let her guard down. Not yet. The night passed slowly. She didn't sleep much. Every sound made her tense up. But Jace never came close. He stayed by the fire, and when morning came, he was still sitting there, eyes open, watching the light rise over the hills. Lyra sat up. Her baby stirred and made a soft sound. She looked at Jace. "Do you want me to start working today?" He looked confused. "Working? You bought me. I can clean, wash clothes, cook. I know how to repair metal, too." Jace shook his head. "You don't have to do anything. But I must repay you. You're not a slave, Lyra." The words shocked her. She didn't know what to say. "You're free to leave," he continued. "But you can stay here as long as you need." Free? That word didn't feel real. "No one is free," she said, her voice flat. "I was a soldier once," he said. "I know what it's like to be trapped, to lose everything. You're not alone anymore." Lyra looked down at her baby. Riven's tiny fingers held her shirt. She thought about all the things she had gone through, the hunger, the running, the fear. No one had stood by her. Until now. "Why are you kind to me?" she asked. "I don't know," Jace answered. "Maybe because I've lost too much. Maybe because I want to believe someone can still be saved." His voice was calm, but there was pain in it. Lyra heard it. She slowly stood up. Her legs were stronger today. The food had helped. "I'll stay," she said, not sure why. "Just for a little while." Jace didn't smile, but he nodded. "Then I'll make more food." He walked to the box again and pulled out more packs. Lyra sat down and watched him, For the first time in weeks, she wasn't scared of the person next to her. Still, something inside her stayed quiet and careful. She had lived too long with danger to forget it so easily. But as she watched her baby smile in his sleep, and as the human handed her warm food again without asking for anything, a small part of her heart started to thaw. Maybe this strange man didn't want to own her. Maybe he just wanted her to live. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Her past, his pain. The stars had faded. Morning light spread across the rocky hills of Neuraxis 9, soft and gray. Smoke still floated in the air, but the camp was calm. Lyra sat near the fire, holding Riven close, watching the human quietly as he cleaned an old weapon with slow, practiced hands. For the first time in days, her body didn't hurt. Her child had eaten. Her hands weren't shaking, but her heart was still heavy. Fear didn't disappear just because someone gave you food. Pain didn't vanish because a man didn't hit you. She had learned that long ago. Jace didn't speak much, and neither did she. They existed in the same space like two shadows side by side, but silence wasn't empty here. It was strange, almost peaceful. Yet there were too many questions inside her. She couldn't hold them back forever. "You said you were a soldier," she asked quietly. Jace nodded without looking at her. "Earth Defense Corps, 13 years. Why did you leave?" He paused. His hand stopped moving. The fire crackled between them, the sound sharp in the morning air. "My unit was sent to protect a colony," he said slowly. "We were told it was a simple job, but it wasn't. Pirates hit the colony hard. They killed the people, burned everything. We got there too late." Lyra stayed silent, listening. "My wife and daughter were living on that colony," he said. His voice didn't shake. It was steady. Almost too steady. "They died before I even landed." Lyra looked at him. She understood that kind of loss. "I lost my mate too," she said softly. "He was taken during the war. I searched for him after, but found only his name on a wall." She paused. "My people called me a burden after that. A broken female with a child to feed. I had no caste, no worth. I was just extra weight." Jace didn't speak, but he didn't look away either. "I ran," Lyra continued, "from shame, from hunger, from everything." There was silence again, but it felt different now. He knew her pain. She felt it, and he had shared his own. Without pride, without pretending to be strong. Lyra reached into her cloak and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. It was a piece of carved wood shaped like a flower. She placed it on the ground between them. "My mate carved this," she said. "For Riven. It's all I have left of him." Jace leaned forward and touched the flower gently. "It's beautiful." "It was made from a tree that no longer grows on our planet," she said. "It was burned in the war." Jace nodded. "Earth lost its blue oceans during our last war. Now we drink from tanks and pipes. 2 people, 2 planets, both broken. Yet here they were, sharing stories by a fire on a forgotten world." "Dutyo, you hate the people who did this to you?" Lyra asked suddenly. "I used to," he answered. "But hate only burns the one who carries it." She thought about that, about how many nights she had cried, shaking with anger, cursing everyone who left her behind. "I thought all humans were cruel," she said. "Most are. Most people everywhere are just scared," he replied. "They hurt others so they don't feel small." She looked at him, really looked this time. His face was tired, with a scar running across his right cheek. His eyes were sharp, but filled with sadness. "You don't act like the others," she said. "That's because I know what it's like to be nothing." They didn't say more. Words weren't needed. As the sun rose higher, Riven woke up and reached out. Jace moved closer and handed the baby a small spoon from the supply kit. Riven grabbed it and giggled. That sound, the first laugh Lyra had heard from her child in weeks, cut through the air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She blinked quickly, brushing away a tear. "Thank you," she whispered. Jace didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the child. But in that moment, something shifted. Lyra no longer felt like cargo or trash or a burden. She felt seen, not as a slave, not as a problem, but as a person. And that, more than food or shelter, was what she had needed all along. The night of the fire. The air had a strange stillness that evening, the kind that made your skin crawl even when the wind was warm. Jace was cleaning his rifle while Lyra boiled water for a meal. Riven played beside her, giggling as he tried to catch glowing bugs dancing in the twilight. For a moment it felt almost like a family. Lyra didn't say it out loud, but she felt something she hadn't known in years. Peace. A quiet she could trust. A rhythm of safety. Jace gave her space but not distance. He never asked for anything, but he never ignored her either. She watched how he spoke gently to Riven, how he always gave her the better share of food, and how he never looked at her the way traders used to, like something to buy and use. But peace has a way of ending quickly. That night, the wind brought more than silence. It carried the scent of smoke, and something worse. Danger. Jace's head lifted sharply. He smelled it too. "Get inside the tent," he said in a low voice. Lyra didn't ask why. She grabbed Riven and ducked inside. Jace stood still, listening. His hand moved to the pistol on his belt. Then the firelight bent, and a shadow stepped into camp. Bruthak. The same alien who had sold Lyra like garbage. His 4 eyes gleamed with hate, and behind him stood 3 armed thugs, their weapons glowing faint red in the dark. "You took something. That belonged to me," Bruthak growled. "She never belonged to you," Jace said. Bruthak smiled wickedly. "Doesn't matter, the crowd saw me sell her, that means she was mine. You're just another human with too much heart and too little brain." "You're not walking out of here with her," Jace said, his voice calm but sharp. "We'll see," Bruthak replied, snapping his fingers. One of the thugs lit a plasma torch and threw it at the edge of the camp. Flames burst up instantly, hungry and wild. The fire spread fast, catching the dry fuel and cloth. Smoke rose in thick curls, choking the air. Inside the tent, Lyra covered Riven's face with a cloth and held him tight. Her heart pounded. She heard shouting, footsteps, and the sound of a weapon charging. Then, gunfire. Not one shot. Many. Outside, Jace moved like a soldier again. Smooth. Deadly. His rifle lit up the night with sharp bursts of light. He rolled behind cover, dodging blasts. One of the thugs screamed and fell. Another was thrown back by a precise headshot. But Bruthak didn't run. He rushed forward with a roar, swinging a heavy blade. Jace met him head-on. They clashed in the firelight. Muscle against muscle, rage against control. Bruthak slashed wildly, his size giving him power. But Jace moved with training. He dodged, struck, and finally slammed the butt of his rifle into Bruthak's throat. The alien stumbled. Choking, Jace didn't wait. One hard punch sent Bruthak to the ground. The last thug tried to run, but Jace shot his leg. He collapsed, howling. It was over. The camp was in pieces. Fire still burned along the edge. Supplies were scattered. But Jace stood tall, blood on his face, chest rising and falling fast. Lyra ran out with Riven, coughing through the smoke. She saw him standing there, injured but alive. Her eyes widened as she saw the blood dripping from his arm and his busted lip. "You're hurt," she cried, rushing to him. "I've had worse," he said, breathing hard. "Are you two okay?" Lyra nodded. Her voice shook. "We're fine, you protected us." Jace looked at her, and for the first time his strong face softened. "I told you, you're not property." She helped him sit down as he winced in pain. She cleaned his wound, her fingers gentle but fast. Riven sat quietly as if understanding something big had just happened. "You could have left me," she whispered. "Most would have." Jace looked at her with tired eyes. "You weren't mine to leave. You're not a thing. You're a mother. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. That night, Lyra didn't sleep on the edge of camp. She didn't watch him from a distance. She wrapped Riven in a fresh blanket, then lay down beside the man who had just risked his life for her. Not because she was beautiful, not because he wanted something, but because he believed she mattered. And for the first time, she believed it too. Healing with love, not chains. Morning came with the soft sound of birds Lyra had never heard before. Strange little things with silver feathers that chirped shyly in the cold air. The camp smelled of ashes from the night's fire. But it was calm again, peaceful, and alive. Lyra sat beside Jace as he slept, his arm bandaged, his breath slow and steady. His jacket had been folded under his head like a pillow. His face, usually serious, looked peaceful now, even gentle. It was strange. This was the same man who had fought off 3 armed thugs and a furious alien like it meant nothing. And yet now, he slept like a man with no enemies. She reached out without thinking and brushed a bit of ash from his cheek. Her fingers paused. He didn't wake. He trusted her enough to sleep beside her. That thought made something tighten in her chest. She had not been touched gently in a long time. In her world, touches meant control, pain, punishment. But here, in this quiet camp with a broken soldier and her child safe in his arms, she was starting to remember something else. What kindness felt like. What it meant to be cared for without being owned. Riven sat in her lap, chewing on a soft corner of the blanket. He laughed when she tickled his feet. A real laugh. Loud, joyful, alive. The sound made her smile without even trying. She looked at her son and saw color in his cheeks again. His eyes sparkled. He no longer looked like a child waiting to die. She glanced at Jace again. This man didn't just feed them. He brought them back to life. Later, Jace woke up and sat beside the fire. He didn't groan or complain about the pain. He just looked at her and said, "You slept okay?" "I did," she replied softly. "No bad dreams?" "Only memories," she said. He gave a slow nod. "They fade. Eventually." Lyra hesitated, then walked over and knelt beside him. She gently touched the bandage on his shoulder, checking it. "Does it hurt?" "Only when I breathe," he said, smirking. She smiled a real smile. "Then stop breathing." He laughed, a small, rough sound. "That's the first joke you've made. It's probably the worst one, too." They both laughed. Not forced, not nervous, just 2 people trying to heal. She sat down beside him. Their shoulders almost touched. She could feel the warmth from his skin. And still, he didn't move away. He didn't act like she didn't belong. "You should rest more," she said. "I will if you will." "Deal." They both stayed like that for a while. Quiet, but not alone. Riven played nearby, crawling through a pile of soft fabric like a tiny explorer. The world was still broken outside this camp, but inside, it felt whole. That night, Lyra sat beside the fire while Jace cleaned his rifle slowly. She watched the way he handled it, not like a man hungry for violence, but like someone who knew it was part of him now. A tool. A memory. "Why did you never chain me?" she asked suddenly. Jace didn't look up. "Because you're not a prisoner. But you bought me." "I bought time," he said, finally looking at her. "Time to make sure you and the kid didn't die on the street." Lyra blinked. Her throat felt tight again. "No one's ever done that for me before," she whispered. "You don't owe me anything," Jace said. "You're free. You've always been free. The world just lied to you about it." That night, when they prepared to sleep, Lyra didn't lay her blanket at the far edge of camp. She placed it near Jace's fire. When Riven began to cry in the dark, Jace sat up and gently rocked him until he fell asleep again. Lyra watched in silence, her eyes wide. She had seen strong men before. Warriors, leaders, killers. But this was a different kind of strength. A man who fought to protect, a man who didn't see her as something broken. She lay down beside him, close enough to feel his breath. Her head rested lightly against his arm. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply stayed there, warm, still, present, not a master, not a savior, just someone who chose to care. And for Lyra, who had known chains more than comfort, that was something greater than freedom. It was love. The child who called him father. The days passed, slow and warm like soft sunlight after a long storm. The camp no longer felt like a place of survival. It felt like home. Lyra found herself smiling more, speaking freely, even laughing. She helped Jace with supplies, cleaned tools, and sang quiet lullabies to Riven at night. It all felt natural, like a life she never thought she'd have again. But it was Riven who changed first. He no longer cried in the middle of the night. He crawled faster, stronger, full of energy and light. He followed Jace everywhere, pulling at his boots, giggling, when Jace picked him up and tossed him gently in the air. Lyra would sit and watch, hands over her mouth in disbelief as her son, once near death, now shined like a star. One morning, while Jace worked on a solar heater, Riven crawled up to him, stood on wobbly legs, and reached out with both arms. "Dada," he said. Everything stopped. The tool in Jace's hand fell to the ground. Lyra froze. The wind paused like it too had heard the word. Jace turned, his eyes wide. "What did he say?" Lyra's hand flew to her mouth. He said, "Dada." Riven clapped his hands and said it again. "Dada." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She had taught Riven many words. Water, food, mama. But never that one. She had never told him to say it. He had chosen it on his own. Jace knelt down slowly and picked up the child, holding him close. He didn't say anything at first. His jaw clenched. His eyes stared far away. Lyra watched in silence, afraid to breathe. Then he spoke, his voice low and shaky. "I never thought I'd hear that word again." Lyra stepped closer. "Your daughter, she used to call you that?" He nodded. "She was just a little older than Riven when I lost her." Riven placed his tiny hand on Jace's cheek, as if he understood. Lyra had seen many men cry in her life. Angry tears, drunk tears, selfish tears. But this was different. Jace held the baby tight, not saying a word as one tear rolled down his face. A tear full of love, pain, memory, and healing all at once. Lyra sat beside him and placed her hand on his. He chose that word himself. I never taught it to him. Jace let out a shaky breath. "I'm not his real father. You protected him. You fed him. You held him when he was sick. Blood doesn't make a father. Love does." He looked at her then. Really looked. Not like a soldier. Not like a protector. But like a man standing on the edge of something he didn't think he deserved. "I'm not sure I know how to be that," he whispered. Lyra smiled softly. "You already are." That night, the fire glowed brighter than usual. Riven slept curled between them. Lyra sat close, resting her head on Jace's shoulder. His arm came around her gently, not like a claim, but like a promise. No words were said, but something changed in the space between them. Not forced, not planned, just real. Later, Lyra pulled out the wooden flower her mate had carved long ago. She looked at it, then at Jace, then placed it beside the fire. Jace didn't ask why. "It belonged to my past," she said quietly. "But my future might be different now." Jace nodded. "You're safe here, both of you, for as long as you want." She didn't respond right away. Her eyes stayed on the fire. Then she whispered, "Then maybe I want forever." And for the first time in years, Lyra didn't feel lost. She felt found. A new family, a new future. They didn't pack quickly. There was no need to rush. The world outside still burned in places, yes, but in this small camp under the Neuraxis sky, something rare had taken root. Home. Jace stood near the edge of the rocky cliff, where the wind blew strong. Below, the vast lands stretched wide. Red, soil, broken roads, and the faint lights of distant cities. It was a cruel world. He knew that. Lyra knew that. But behind them, near the fire, Riven was playing with a stick, giggling as if the universe had never been unkind. It was time. Jace had sent a signal weeks ago, a formal request for clearance to return to Earth. Not as a soldier, not as a merchant, but with 2 passengers who were not on any registry, a mother and her child. The reply had come yesterday. Earth Command approved the transport. Reluctantly, quietly, but they allowed it. Lyra stood beside Jace now, her eyes watching the sky. "You're sure about this?" she asked. He didn't answer with words at first. He simply reached down, took her hand in his and held it gently. She looked up at him. "Earth won't want me there. They will if I'm with you. I'm not like them. I don't look like them." Jace smiled faintly. "Neither do I anymore." That made her laugh. They returned to the camp and gathered what little they had. Lyra folded Riven's blanket and tied it to her back. Jace packed the last of the rations. He looked at the wooden flower near the fire. It had stayed there for days now, untouched. Lyra had left it behind once already, but this time she picked it up and carried it with her, not because she was holding on to the past, but because she wanted to bring it into the future. As they walked toward the ship, Riven tugged at Jace's hand. "Up," the child said simply. Jace scooped him into his arms with ease. "You just want to fly," he teased. Riven giggled and pointed at the ship waiting nearby. An old cargo vessel, but strong. It wasn't much to look at, but it had room enough for 3 hearts that had known too much pain. Lyra paused before stepping onto the ramp. She turned and looked back at the camp. It was only ashes now, burned logs, quiet fire pits. But in her mind it would always be the place where everything changed, where fear became warmth, where a stranger became her protector, where survival became something more. A life. Jace stood beside her. "You don't have to say goodbye." He said softly. She nodded. "I'm not. I'm saying thank you." The ship's engines roared to life and they rose from the ground. Riven pressed his face against the window, eyes wide. Lyra sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his small one. Jace sat across from them, quiet, watching them both. As the planet grew smaller below, Lyra leaned forward and whispered, "So, what happens now?" Jace thought for a moment. Then he said, "We start over." She tilted her head. "Start over? As what?" He gave a slow smile. "As a family." She looked at Riven, then at Jace, and nodded. Not fast, not like a fairy tale, but like someone who finally believed it was possible. The ship turned toward Earth, and 3 broken souls left behind their pain. Not with chains, not with fear, but with love, trust, and a promise of something new. Not just survival, but a future. Together.